Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and I am currently subscribed to Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, HBO Go, the Criterion Channel. Oh, and I still have cable.
And I'm Matt Freeman, and I'm subscribed to Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO Go, Rooster Teeth First, and YouTube Red. And I don't have cable anymore.
This week on the show, in case you guys haven't guessed, we're going to be talking about streaming, about the state of the ways in which we consume television in 2019, because things are changing, Matt. Things are happening. There's some exciting news. We were already planning on talking about this topic this week, and then some bombshell news dropped yesterday, I believe it was, related to Netflix. And so it just felt like the perfect time to talk about this quickly encroaching streaming wars that we're going to have.
Yeah, an unusual show topic for us because we're not really going to be talking about any particular piece of media. It's more of a meta discussion of the media space and where things stand right now.
Yeah, and I think that's important to talk about, though, because I would say you and I consume media above average, at the above average level than most people. You don't watch as much television, but you do watch and read and do other levels of media consumption.
Yeah, I mean, one interesting thing, which we may or may not get into a lot, is I consume an absolutely absurd amount of YouTube, which I am paying for the YouTube subscription fee, right?
Yeah.
So I don't have ads, and like for me, that's definitely worth it. I can't even estimate how much time that saves, but that's that's kind of an edge case, right? That's not really what we're specifically talking about today, but it certainly does fall under that umbrella, I would say.
I would completely agree with that, for sure. All right, so yeah, we're going to be talking about streaming, try to figure out what this streaming war is going to look like that seems to be inevitable. And then we're going to spend some time talking about the 2019 box office, because it's not looking good, Matt.
Okay.
And then I saw Toy Story 4, and I want to talk about it a little bit. So we'll have a spoiler-free, brief review by me of Toy Story 4.
All right.
So that's our episode this week.
Cool. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. All right. Streaming. I want you to think back, Matt. I want you to close your eyes.
Okay.
Everyone listening to you, close your eyes.
Okay.
And think back to the year 2009, I think it was.
Okay.
I should have looked that up before I started doing this. Think back to the year where a little company called Netflix decided that, hey, we're going to allow you to watch stuff straight from your device.
What a terrible idea.
Yeah, it was awful.
I prefer to get my DVDs mailed to me in the mail. Can you believe that was real?
But do you remember when Netflix wanted to split into two different companies?
Quickster.
Quickster. That was 2011 when Netflix was like, we're going to split our mail service and our streaming service into two different things. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
Yeah.
But the whole world has changed since then.
I know. It's seriously amazing to me how much trouble Netflix was having. And I don't even really understand how the process evolves. Hopefully we can figure some of this out as we go today.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that the impetus behind a lot of the growth in this area is not because of the reasons we think it is. And I want to start with Netflix in this conversation because I think Netflix is really the key to all this, because they changed the landscape. Their success is the thing that everyone is copying now. The services that are already out and the services that are coming down the pike. And the thing about Netflix is, and I did some research before we started talking because I'm a good podcaster. Only 37% of the things that are streamed on Netflix right now are Netflix original content, which means 63% of the things that people are watching on Netflix is not stuff they made. It's stuff that they are licensing. And that's a big deal because the big news that happened this week is that The Office, the most streamed show on Netflix, will no longer be on Netflix starting in the year 2021. January 2021, Netflix will leave, or The Office will leave Netflix and will go back to NBC Universal, which is the company that owns it, but still had to bid for it because of weird governmental regulation, whatever. They still had to bid for the rights, and they won the rights to stream it for 5 years on their new streaming platform, which is coming out January 2021, called NBC Universal whatever. I don't know what I'm just going to put a plus after all these now because I'm just going to assume everything's that plus.
Okay. NBC Plus. Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's what's happening. $500 million over 5 years is how much NBC paid to get their show back, the rights to stream all 9 seasons of their show back on their thing. A show that mind you finished in 2013.
Right.
And this is the weird landscape we're in, because we're in this landscape right now where everybody is starting their own service. And as a result of that, the companies that were happy to sell their rights to Netflix to The Office back in 2013, when like streaming, what is that? Yeah, sure. I'll take a couple $1 million for the rights for that. We're not doing anything with it. And Netflix was gobbling all these up at discount prices. They're losing all that. Friends is leaving Netflix too. At the end of this year, Friends is going to be gone. That's still a huge show for them. It's a show they paid $100 million for this year to keep the rights to. They're losing that because Warner Brothers is starting their own service. Warner Brothers Plus. I don't know if it's Warner Brothers Plus, but Warner Brothers, who is the one that has the Friends rights, are starting their own streaming service as well. So we're in this spot right now where Netflix has been the king forever. We have down the line, we have Disney Plus is coming out, Apple Plus is coming out, a bunch of other ones, like the ones we just talked about, but other channels are getting in on this too. And things are going to change, Matt. And I just kind of wanted to walk through this because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and it's also confusing because like just some of the numbers make no sense. Like the paying $500 million so that you have the rights to stream a show, which people aren't going to even be paying for the show. They're paying for the streaming service.
Yeah.
And so that means that they expect more than $500 million worth of subscription fees that can be, in some sense, like in a accounting sense, attributed to The Office.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, they probably wouldn't have done it if that number didn't make sense to them, but that just seems like a pretty high number.
Well, here's something you're going to find crazy. I looked this up because I was curious. Right now, this year, Friends, the show that went off the air 17 years ago, makes $1 billion a year in syndication. $1 billion a year that show pulls in. That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's, you have to think of it in kind of a cockamamie way, because like, yeah, when a movie makes $1 billion, we're kind of used to that now, because it's like, yeah, I mean, everybody goes to see the movie at the same time. They pay $10 or whatever for a ticket just to see that movie. You know, millions of people or whatever go and see it.
Right.
However many it is. And yeah, like the math kind of just adds up, and you can see how that would be $1 billion. But you can also think like, all right, well, the TV show is playing year round, maybe even more than once per day. You're selling ads or whatever. And it's basically just to a much wider audience spread out over a much longer period of time. Yeah. So even though they, like, the individual cost of showing one ad on one TV show is probably not that high, you can see how it begins to add up. So
yeah.
It's fun to go through the exercise though, because after thinking about it for a bit, I suppose that makes sense. But then you start to fathom the numbers that are involved in the whole entertainment industry, because it's like, okay, $500 million for one show for 5 years. Okay, right. So but you're going to have other shows on there too. So now we're adding things up. We're probably getting into the billions of dollars just for the ability to distribute these ancient properties.
Yeah.
That's where it starts to get bizarre for me, because then it really seems like these entities, NBC, Netflix, even Amazon, at least in terms of their media branch, are becoming like gatekeepers of this content.
Yeah.
And that's almost all they are.
Right. And that's the weird thing to me. So also fun fact about the Friends money. The brilliant stars of that television show negotiated a 2% drop off the back end. So guess what? The 6 stars of Friends make more money today on Friends than they did when they were the highest paid actors in television while the show was being filmed, because they were making $1 million an episode. There were 18 episodes in the final season of Friends. They make $20 million a year each now, just off the syndication back end. That's insane. That's
Good
insane
for them.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, that's brilliant. I don't know how they pulled that off is amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Here's what I think the big question about this stuff is. And we've got a lot of questions we're going to attempt to answer tonight. I don't know if we're going to be able to. But the big question I have about this idea that people love putting on The Office, people love putting on Friends. They're good comfort shows. They're good falling asleep shows. They're good doing chores shows, cooking. These are good, great things to have on in the background while you're doing these things. That's why people watch them so much. The question is, if I tell you Netflix is losing The Office, will you then go, okay, where's it going? I'll sign up for that service. And I don't think you will. Like, I think for the majority of consumers, like, the idea of following a show, like, it's just like everyone's like, I'm subscribed to Netflix because I like a few of their original things, and everybody has Netflix, and also they have The Office. So because The Office happens to be on there, I'll throw on The Office. Why not? Right. But the question is that enough of a draw? Like, it's casual, like almost indifferent viewing at this point,
right?
Because it's an older show. So is that enough of a draw? Can NBC Universal Plus, whatever it's called, can they just put The Office up there and then say people will sign up because it's The Office? I don't know. I don't know if they will.
Yeah, I mean, surely some number of people will. I agree with you that I don't see that as being as many people as they might hope. Like, right. I definitely, for a period of time, was like I kind of, the Netflix was part of my routine, and I would like have my iPad set up where I could like watch whatever while doing the dishes or whatever, and doing laundry and whatever. And what's interesting is I evolved from that into just like listening to podcasts and
right.
Or even just like listening to YouTube videos, which are basically podcasts with usually a video component that can be ignored.
Yeah, like a talking head mostly. Yeah.
Yes. And doing that while doing those same chores. And at this point in time, like I don't think I would ever go back the other direction. Like, so me being a sample size, like I am the kind of person who used to kind of like comfort watch those shows, and I didn't even have the excuse of, oh, well, they stopped streaming it. For me, it was more just like, well, there's what is basically just a better option, which is the infinitely deep trench of random YouTube videos.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. And I'm not sure, like, this is the weird thing we're talking about here, is that like, so we're calling this peak TV, right? Like, prestige television, there has never been more of it. There are so many shows being made, to the point where people like me that really like to watch as many shows as possible, like, I can't keep up anymore. But those things are not the money makers, right? Like, Netflix spends $100 million a season on The Crown, and they can afford to spend $100 million a season on The Crown because they have The Office.
Right.
And I wonder what all this means. Like, we're doing this thing now where people are all making their own streaming services, and people like Apple are coming out with their service, and Apple has nothing to back it up with. Like, I think the brilliance of what Disney is doing, and why I think Disney is going to very easily take Netflix's crown is because Disney could open their service tomorrow and never produce new content. And their backlog is so big and so important that I think that's enough of a draw for a lot of people.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think I've said before in the show that like I there's so many old Disney movies that I like don't want to buy. I don't want to go out and buy like 15 Disney movies because that's just too much of an investment. But
yeah,
if they make it so that I can watch all of those Disney movies if I just go on their streaming service, then that's a pretty big draw for me personally.
Yeah. But I mean, and that's the unknown. Apple doesn't have that. Disney Plus has that. Netflix is losing all those things. Netflix is going to be increasingly relying on that 37% original content number to go up. That number, and it's going to go up by default when The Office leaves. Like that number is going to go up, but what is going to happen to that? Like, and I guess that's like a question of consumerism, right? Of like how dedicated our consumers are to switching things up versus just keeping the same service they had because that's the easy thing. I mean, that's kind of what I think Netflix is really hoping for at this point.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that occurs to me, and this is more of a question, and I wish I'd thought of this question before the show so that I could look it up and do some research. But like, is it possible that all of these services combined are just getting a lot more revenue than the old TV networks were ever getting from ads? Because like it used to be that whatever network you were on, your revenue was pretty much through ads. I believe. And like I don't know how much. My question is, okay, well, how much do you make? How much did NBC make? Was NBC the Friends network?
No, that's The Office.
Okay. Well, then,
I think so. It's confusing, right? We have to differentiate between the production studio and the distribution studio, right?
Yeah.
I think Friends was on NBC. That's the channel it premiered on. But Friends is owned by Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers produced that show.
Yeah.
And they sold the rights to distribute to NBC.
Okay.
So it's Warner Brothers that's putting it on their streaming service because they have it. But
okay. Well, instead of untangling all that, I'm just going to talk about The Office, which was on NBC, right?
Yes.
And just say like, okay,
and
well,
owned by NBC.
So back
Universal.
So back when they were on TV, they would sell an ad spot, right? And that would be some number of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars for a given show, for a given show time. And then you basically have to like wave your hands and divide that by the number of people who were probably watching the show. And I wonder what the number was, like how many dollars per person watching the show did that come out to be? And then my question is $10 a month actually more than what they were getting through the old ad model? And if so, then is it possible that the world can just support a lot more television show creation using this new subscription model?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sheer number of shows that exist, the original shows that exist now, kind of prove that yes is the answer to that question.
Yeah, I think so.
That this is a much more financially advantageous model for the studio. That they make more money off of this. Absolutely. The consumer side is the one that's interesting, right? Because like you don't have cable anymore. I still have cable. I've never cut the cord, but almost everyone I know has. Almost everyone I know has ditched their cable subscription. But now we're at this point where I wish someone would bundle all these streaming services together and sell them to me at a monthly fee, which is just cable again, right? Like that's
right.
what we're getting. We're getting to this point where like everything's going to be so distributed, and that's what's happening right now. As the old shows leave and our traditional content and the new shows are created on that content, we're getting more stratified. Like I have 5 damn things already and there's more coming out. Am I going to get a subscription to Disney Plus? Yeah, probably, because there's stuff on there I want to watch. Am I going to get a subscription to CBS All Access? I really want to, because they keep making Star Trek stuff, but I don't know if I can afford it. Am I going to get a subscription to Apple? I don't know. Spielberg's making a thing on there, and so is Shyamalan, and I really want to see those things.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's getting to the point where like the reason why everyone was frustrated with cable is because it was too much damn money. And it
Yeah.
was. Cable's expensive. It is really expensive. I looked at my cable bill today, and I hadn't looked at my cable bill in a while because, like, you know, the deals run off, and it creeps up in price without you noticing unless you're
Right.
paying attention to it. And I was shocked at how much money I'm paying. But if I cut that bill out and then say, okay, I've cut that out, but I need HBO. I still need the three main ones. I still need HBO. I really want the Disney one. I really want CBS. Like to replace that with the shows, with just the shows I want to watch, just a la carte on the shows I want to watch on the streaming service I want to watch on them. It's about the same price.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually, over the course of this conversation, have sort of come around and become a bit more cynical because I don't think this is going to result in a singularity of all of the of one, you know, Amazon or Apple or whatever eating up all of the other services, because
No.
the only way they could do that, like you said, would be if they increase their price, because unless they increase their price, there's no way that they could afford to pay the $500 million for Friends and the $500 million for The Office and the $500 million for 57 other shows. They have to be broken up, and then everybody just picks and chooses which streaming services they actually care about. And I guess then there's a little bit of a Darwinian process on that level where, you know, maybe one of these services didn't manage to snap up any of the really lucrative properties, and nobody buys that subscription, and then they implode.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the ecosystem, at least until we shift technology again, because ultimately this happened because of technology, and I think technology will continue probably to change pretty rapidly, actually, and who knows what things will look like in 5 or 10 more years. But at least while we're at this technological status quo, I think that we are going to be stuck with 15 different streaming services.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, like, I'm not even sure which way I would prefer. And I completely agree with you that, like, no streaming service is getting The Office again. Like, that's not going to happen. Like, unless NBC's plan fails and their service has to shut down, and they're like, okay, it didn't work, we have to sell this to someone. And then, of course, Netflix will come in and go like, oh, well, how about at half of what you paid to get it? And that could happen. I don't know. I don't know how much these services have to rake in order to make money, because, like, we saw DC launched their big thing, right? They launched their DC. I think it's DC All Access, where they were going to put all their DC movies on there, all the animated movies and some of the live action movies, and they were going to have their entire comic collection on there, and they were going to make all these new shows for it. They made Doom Patrol, they made Swamp Thing, I think they made the Titans show. Some of these shows were critically acclaimed too, like Doom Patrol apparently is a very good show, but the service has failed, and it looks like they're going to shut it down. So, like, that's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. Some of these ventures are going to fail. But of course, like Disney and Apple and probably even Warner Brothers and Universal, those companies are too big to where even if this bit fails, like Apple would gladly run at a negative on their streaming service because they can afford it, right? Like, they don't need this segment of their business to turn a profit in the short term, because they have enough cash to pay for it for like 20 years if they wanted to.
Yeah, I have wondered if Apple was going to make some bold move and, like, basically wrap up a lot of this stuff into I forget what the Apple Music service is, but I am already paying for that.
I think it's just Apple Music.
Yeah, because that would be a pretty big coup if they just suck more of your attention through the Apple vortex, and Apple has a good way of making it so that you never want to go back after you're stuck in their system.
Yeah.
But they don't seem to be too keen on that. I guess I'm not too aware of what Apple's moves in the TV streaming space have been, actually.
They're being very unclear about it, actually. I mean, they had this big thing. They announced their new box or their new Apple TV thing, which is not the streaming service. So they have Apple TV Plus, which is not the streaming service. It's like they want it to be like a cable box. Like they want all your services to come through their cable box. So it's like they're taking their Apple TV concept and then like Appleizing it more. But they also have their streaming service, which still is unpriced. We saw a little bit more of some of the shows that they're working on, but not much. They're getting, I mean, it's Apple, so they're throwing out so much money. Like they're getting the biggest people in Hollywood because they have so much money to throw at people. Whether that's going to be good, I don't know. But yeah, it's very interesting. Like it doesn't seem like they're trying to like reinvent the idea. Like they're not doing Apple, right? They're not like, all right, here's a concept. How can we make it better and more seamless and easier? And that's not what they're doing. They're just kind of following here.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, tangent, but I don't think Apple has really been doing that ever since Steve Jobs died. I mean, even their hardware, they've made so many blunders recently. I think they're just trying to like milk their brand at this point and put out version +1 of whatever thing they just did, except it's not actually an improvement, which is very much in keeping with what they're doing with the TV thing, where it's like, well, how can we monetize thing rather than like, what is the clever and visionary twist that we can put on thing?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if we learned anything in this conversation. Like, we're just at this, like, Disney Plus comes out this fall, I think, and I think that's going to be really the first big shot. I think the Netflix losing The Office thing is our warning shots of this war. Like that's signs of the times to come. But Disney's going to throw themselves down, and their pricing there is really competitively. I think it's like $8 a month to Netflix's. If you want to get the 4K Netflix, it's up to $16 a month. So they're going to price themselves really competitively. They have a massive backlog. They're making Star Wars shows. The Mandalorian actually is supposed to look great, shockingly. I think they're going to bust onto the scene, and everything's going to start to change. And I don't know if it's good. Like I think the idea of 15 different services that you have to subscribe if you want to see like the 15 different shows that you like is bad. But I also think like one company being the dominating force that's the one-stop shop place, I think that's bad too. Like, yeah, I think we lived in this magical parody world for about 5 years, right? Like, because we started out, it was like the Wild West where Netflix was just kind of buying up all these properties because no one saw the value in streaming yet, and they were the ones that saw it, so they were buying up all these things on the cheap, and they were getting the rights to them, and they were signing long-term contracts because they were smart enough to realize that this is going to be huge, and if we can get this stuff on the cheap now, we're going to benefit from it. And they were right. And they did that, and then everyone else kind of followed suit. And now we've lived in this world of like where Netflix is definitely still the dominating one, but we've got all these other channels now. Like Amazon Prime has been making great TV, Hulu's been making great TV. We're kind of at this thing where like, yeah, some other players are here, but it hasn't really broken out yet. But it's on the horizon, man. I can see it. It's coming. Tomorrow is coming, and yeah. It's going to be crazy.
Right. I mean, I guess, I agree that both of those things are bad, but they're bad in very different ways. And I prefer both of those extremes to, I can watch any channel except I have to have my brain destroyed by commercials. Like, I mean, I definitely appreciate, and like for the sake of my kids, appreciate the fact that I'm not destroyed by commercials, that like half of my damn life isn't wasted with commercials. But like, I mean, basically now we're faced with, at the one end of the scale, the domination of one superpower in this space, which honestly, Netflix has been the superpower in this space, and they haven't been that bad. And then the other extreme, which I think we're actually heading to, will be a kind of chaos where we actually end up spending a lot more to watch all the things that we want to watch.
Yeah.
and then like randomly the service that you're watching will stop showing the thing that you want to see, and you'll have to switch over to a different one, and it'll be really annoying.
Yeah. Well, to your point, if the subscription model is more like economically advantageous to a company than the ad model, which it seems like it is, then all we've done is shift the burden of the consumption on to the buyer, right? Like it has moved. It used to be that like this was making money in TV was an arrangement between a studio and a bunch of corporations, and then us the consumer got to witness it like at first for free, and then cable came along and changed a little bit, but mostly for free. And the cost of that transaction for us was time via commercials, right? And now you're absolutely right that the cost of that transaction has shifted. Now corporations are not sending a bunch of money to the studios. We are, and now we don't have to watch commercials anymore.
Yeah.
But now the more burden of that cost is coming to us because the studios are going to make their money when any way they can.
Yeah, but you know, another thing, I think it's just strictly better for us to be paying it ourselves, because when you're beholden to the advertisers, like there's a reason why the channels that were always on cable and thus you always had to pay to watch them had the best TV. It was because they weren't beholden to the advertisers.
Yeah, because HBO could show some boobies.
HBO could show boobies and violence. On the flip side right now, like all of this stupid drama with YouTube that's happening all the time with channels getting demonetized and all this shit, it's all just because YouTube is like petrified of offending advertisers.
Yeah.
And like will demonetize a channel at the drop of a hat because they don't want their advertisers to get worried. And like that's, I mean, I guess in a roundabout way, this is one of the reasons why I pay for YouTube, because I just want the channels to get my money. I don't want this weird sick intermediary of the ads. And of course I don't want to watch the ads, but I also don't want the channel to have to like sanitize their content for the sake of ads. That's nonsense. And it's like tragic that has happened. And I wish that I could like wave a magic wand and make it so that everyone just paid a little bit of money to watch YouTube, and then we wouldn't have to be in this terrible situation anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point, that as these subscription model services have reared their ugly head, YouTube has kind of become the traditional model television distribution company.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right that proves that that model sucks, because like look at what YouTube is right now. I agree. I mean, I think it sucks that the monetary burden has to go onto people now, that we're going to have to be paying more money for more TV. But I do think you're right that if we look at YouTube, doing that makes it better.
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like if you value your time in any reasonable way, your time is worth more than $10 a month in exchange for not watching 2 hours of commercials. You know?
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah.
I mean, and I've never even heard it phrased that way, which is weird to me. Like that should be the sales pitch, right? Like, isn't your time worth more than like 50 cents an hour or something? Because like if you watch a lot of YouTube, you're wasting a lot of time. and YouTube Red is not that expensive. So yeah, I don't know. And I am now becoming a proselytizer for paying for streaming services as of this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind doing it either. I just like the sheer number of them is getting overwhelming.
Yes,
to the point where like I have not cut cable, and I pay a lot of money for internet for podcasting and streaming reasons. Like I have very fast internet because I need it. But I mean, think of it, like how much, like my thing was always like, oh, sports. Like I like watching sports. I have to have cable because of the sports. And that's not even really true anymore. Like ESPN, you can have an ESPN subscription. So yeah, I mean,
here's another prediction. Making a lot of predictions today.
All right.
It's going to be chaos for a while, but what's going to gradually happen is that the prices are going to come down, because in the midst of this chaos, actual competitive pressure will begin to be felt. It's been, Netflix has had these really sweet deals for a while. They've been writing on them. Now those are expiring. Other players are popping up. they're going to be paying as little as they can get away with while still winning these big multi-year contracts for the big shows. And then they're going to be charging as little as they can get away with to remain competitive with the other streaming services. And ultimately we're going to end up paying less and less until it reaches rock bottom being where they're making almost no money because they spent $1 billion to get, The Office, and then they're making 1.05 billion in receipts from customers. And at that point, maybe technology will change again and everything will be shaken up. But this is my economic prediction using my extremely advanced economics 101 knowledge.
I don't think I definitely could see that. I mean, it seems like that's what the markets will do for sure. I don't know who wins in that. I mean, like, you could easily say the consumer wins because the prices are going to be dropping. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. I wonder how demand elastic these services are. I don't know.
Yeah, there's demand elasticity. There's also the idea that, like, nobody can really come into this space and charge $20 a month. Like that's just, at this point we're all I think there's a word for it, but I forget. Like we're all like, no streaming service should cost more than $10 or $12 a month. Don't even talk to me if you're going to charge more than that. And so, like, it's almost like narrowed the space of what's possible.
Yeah, that's true. Of course, and we have to say that we're going to be having game streaming services coming soon as well. Google's getting into that. Each and every one of the consoles are doing that as well. So if you want to watch all the TV and play all the games, you're going to have about 100 different services.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Oh, so this is, I don't know if this is a tangent or if this is perfectly appropriate, but somebody on a podcast I was listening to the other day, they were talking about Napster and how, devastating it was to the music industry when Napster came out, because everybody would much rather have their songs free than have to go buy an expensive CD that they bought 15 songs just so they could listen to one of the songs or whatever. And also CDs are just kind of a terrible medium. But then they realized years later that everyone's actually happy to pay for a music streaming service. People are happy to pay for music. People are happy to pay for music if it's, like, efficient and well curated and relatively low effort, and that they would much rather pay for music than have to go to Napster and risk getting a virus and having their collection destroyed and so forth. And I just thought that was an interesting observation, because I hadn't really thought about it in years, this idea that, like, oh wow, like, everything has changed. We've gone through the valley of pirated music, and we're completely out the other side of that now. Like I'm pretty sure everyone I know just gets their music in ways where they're in some way paying for the music. Yeah.
I mean, I think one thing we're learning about, like, just human psychology is we like subscription service. We like subscription plans. Like, we like them. It is designed in a way to minimize the idea of the cost in our heads, because, like, it is very easy to say, is this movie ticket worth $15? And then to parse that in your head. It's like, well, it's 2 hours of time. If I don't like the movie, I'm going to feel like I'm wasted. But the mental gymnastics to $15 a month to have access to all this stuff, even though you might only watch it an hour that month. But nobody does that kind of math. And rarely people are doing the kind of thing where they sit down and add up all their streaming services that they're signed up for and then seeing how much this is costing you. I mean, this, like, it is very, it's like when you buy a car. It's like when you go buy a car and the thing that the salesman wants you to think about is your monthly payment. He doesn't want you to think about the total price of the car.
Yeah.
He wants you to focus on what your monthly payment is going to be. And because it is much easier to take upon an expense when it's broken down in the smallest possible denominator. And that is what all these services are doing. So yeah, I am thrilled to pay $12 a month for Apple Music, because I'm not really thinking, like, what does that mean? How much am I paying per song I'm listening to? Is that really worth it? How often do I, like, nobody does that math.
Yeah. I mean, like for me, it's worth something. Just the intangible knowledge that I have the ability to listen to pretty much any song at any time.
Yeah. If I feel like listening to a song, if I'm driving home and I'm like, I want to listen to that song from Final Fantasy VII. Oh, there it is. I have it. I want to listen to this random crazy ex-girlfriend song I got stuck in my head right there. I want to listen to the hilarious Dracula musical from Forgetting Sarah Marshall. It's there. Yeah. I mean, that feeling is almost what they're selling as much of as them selling the music itself.
Yeah. And like you said, I'm happy to pay that rate for that. And I mean, I've had to buy the same CD like 6 times, and at this point, just given up. And I think my car no longer even has a CD player, so I'm just
mine doesn't. Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yes,
but there we are.
So that's the war of streaming. It's going to be a mess, and it's going to be anti-consumer for a little bit. But I want to believe your positive analysis that eventually the other side of this thing. Maybe we, the consumers, will do all right. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, and one way of framing it, and I don't know if this is true, I may just be wrong about this, but you could say that things have been unsustainably pro-consumer for a few years, in the sense that this has only worked because Amazon was able to trick everyone. Netflix was able to trick everyone into low prices.
Yeah.
And now, like, the real economic like forces are going to come into play, and it's gonna suck. But like, I don't know if I would use the word anti-consumer when it's really just more like, I don't know, the market is restabilizing itself. I could be wrong. It could be the case that these streaming services are absolutely going to exploit us and nickel and dime us, and it's going to be we're going to be paying way more than we were. But I don't know. It'll be interesting. I suspect not, just because if they did, then I feel like another player would come into the market and undercut them. But
but the question about that is, see, this is such an economic podcast. We're not even talking about entertainment anymore. But the question I have about that is this idea that if Netflix charges too much money, another player can come into the market and undercut them. But like, competition amongst these services is kind of wonky because their products aren't the same, right? So like, how do you say like? The streaming service that has The Office and Friends on it can charge whatever they want, because no one can come in and offer that same service at a lower price. Like, they just can't.
Yeah, I don't know. So that relies on kind of this idea of is there the person out there, or is there a population of people out there who are just like, the only reason why I have a Netflix subscription is because of The Office. And as soon as they lose The Office, I'm going to immediately cancel my subscription and change it to whoever has The Office, because that's all I care about.
But it doesn't even have to be The Office. I mean, it can be like anything, like any show. Like, how do I compete with what Netflix has to offer?
Yeah.
Unless I'm I think the barrier to entry here that we're going to see is it's only other giant corporations. And the only way they can compete is because they have enough capital to spend that money to get these huge shows. Yeah,
I think that's true. I mean, one can imagine I'm being very imaginative now. One can imagine a venture capital firm coming along and saying, look, if we create a company called The Office streaming service, and our sole mission is to win the bid for The Office streaming rights and hold on to that forever, and the only thing that we stream is The Office and nothing else, then we can make money. Would that work? I don't know. I have no idea. But
I don't know.
But like it's sort of conceivable that could happen, and then they could get away with charging much less too. Because they didn't have to buy The Office plus 18 other billion-dollar shows. And I mean, that's certainly one, like, if I were writing a science fiction story about this, then it would be like, you pay $1 a month for like any given show, and then you can just watch that show, and that show, you're literally like, every show is associated with its own company. which owns the rights to that show, right? Like that
Yeah.
that's the full atomization. Actually, the science fiction version of the story would be that every episode of every show is owned by a different company. Actually, that's how I would.
That's terrifying.
That's how I would do that story.
I mean,
But yeah,
is there a situation in which you should just get to pay for the show you want, like that you just go to the store and buy a show,
like you would buy a season, like the DVDs.
right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't see why. Like, I don't have any moral problem with that. It's actually kind of funny to me that like you spend, $100 buying a full TV show, in DVD form, or you could just pay for a Netflix subscription and watch it constantly over and over and stuff. Yeah, I don't know.
Except when Netflix no longer carries your show.
Right. Yeah.
If I pay $80 to buy all of The Office on Blu-ray versus Netflix for 8 months, and then Netflix loses it and I don't have it anymore, but I have these DVDs forever.
I don't know. It's an impossible problem.
I mean, like it's complicated. Like I think the thing that we've realized throughout this conversation is this whole thing is complicated, and I'm not sure how it's going to shake out. I'm not sure what the right way is. I'm not sure what the best thing for the consumer is. What I want is I want to pay $20 and I want to get all the shows I want whenever I want them, and I don't think that's too much to ask.
I agree.
But we will find out when all these services start launching later this year. It's going to be an interesting time for TV consumption. I'm really fascinated by that idea that you've kind of thrown out there a couple times about like technology shift. Like I'm trying to imagine what in the world of entertainment production and distribution, what the new technology would be that would fundamentally shift how this stuff's delivered. I can't think of that.
Yeah. Well, I think my prediction without any details as to the specifics of the technology would just be that the overhead cost goes lower and lower and lower.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then you're almost entirely paying for like the licensing fees for the properties or the production fees for the new shows, and that will make things cheaper up to a point. And then of course there's a whole nother wave where it is gonna get cheaper and cheaper to make better and better TV shows. I mean we've like obviously already witnessed that, because like you just couldn't make shows as good as we have now 10 years ago, just due to technology and in a whole bunch of different ways too. And that's just going to be getting better too.
Computer technology has changed special effects. Like you could not put special effects in a seasonal show. Like there wasn't enough time like in the production schedule to put special effects into like the X-Files. Like they did as much as they possibly could.
Yeah, I remember
that's totally changed.
I remember like Hercules, and they'd have like a few seconds of just the worst CGI monster you ever saw, or something like that. Yeah. Or maybe I'm misremembering, and it was actually a dude in a costume. I don't even know. But yeah, like that's the thing is, and I mean, YouTube is, things are getting so cheap and so easy to do that you see even YouTube channels that are run by one person or a handful of people making increasingly good content, and you have to wonder if like the actual content production isn't going to get pushed lower and lower into in a very democratic way into the hands of more and more people, and you're not even going to need $100 million to make a Game of Thrones quality show. You might be able to fund it with a Kickstarter. At some point we will. I'm certain of that. I just don't know if that's 5 years or 30 years from now.
Yeah, I like that outlook. All right, so that is the Stream Wars. This was like a much less pessimistic conversation than I was thinking it would be. I don't feel great, but I don't feel like we're doomed either. So
yeah,
that's good.
I basically walked into the conversation really annoyed at the direction things were going, and then I thought about it and was like, actually, I prefer this to the 90s.
Speaking of bad directions, though, we just talked about all these streaming services and the new ways in which you can see and consume entertainment. And the 2019 summer box office is showing that real bad. So we had Avengers Endgame, which is the biggest movie of the year.
And possibly all time.
And almost the biggest movie of all time. They are re-releasing Avengers into theaters this weekend with special bonus content. So I think they're like $40 million shy of Avatar, and I guess they're kind of hoping that this bumps them over, which I think is funny because normally like Avatar's had multiple runs too. Like Avatar's 2.7 billion whatever is from multiple runs, but it's not like we put it in theaters, it fell out of theaters, and then we put it back again like 2 weeks later. It's like a year or two later we reran Avatar. So that's kind of what I expected Marvel to do, but nah, just gonna throw it out there again. It's Disney. We want that title. So probably the biggest movie of all time. But everything else this summer, everything else has been disappointment after disappointment, and a lot of this is because they're not particularly good movies. Men in Black International did not perform very well. Godzilla King of Monsters did not perform very well. Detective Pikachu did okay, but not like huge. How to Train Your Dragon is the 5th biggest movie of the year, and it didn't do that great. 160 million total domestic, which is not stupendous. I mean, Us, the Jordan Peele, rated R horror movie, did better than How to Train Your Dragon.
Wow.
Which is
That's
like
weird.
You would not expect that at all. And John Wick Chapter 3, the rated R violent action movie, did better than Detective Pikachu. So it's a very weird year. It's like the feeling I think is that Endgame was so big that it kind of just sucked all the box office energy from everything else, and there's just no excitement. Like Toy Story 4 came out, one of the most successful, important, quality franchises in the world, had their 4th movie, and it did all right. It did more in its 3-day weekend than Toy Story 3, but that was 9 years ago. Disney was expecting a lot more from it, and their Monday returns were way down versus Toy Story 3. So it's not like 4 didn't do that great in the opening weekend, but like it's going to have legs because word of mouth is going to be like, no, I know you thought it should have ended after 3, but 4 is actually good. So people are going to come to the theater. Doesn't seem like that's what's going to happen. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but it's just like nothing has done very well. Secret Life of Pets 2, the first one was an incredibly popular movie. Nothing. Rocket Man, kind of hoping, I think, to go off the back of the success of Bohemian Rhapsody, which was an enormous movie. Rocket Man got 78 million, which is not a bad amount for a biopic about Elton John, like an older, not as current,
not super relevant,
but not what they wanted. Like it's really interesting to look at these numbers and see this, and I mean, do you know they made a Shaft sequel? Do you know that?
I heard this.
They did. They made that. It tanked. No one saw it.
Okay.
I think first of all they did a really bad job advertising it because but also it just didn't do well at all. I think the biggest failure is Dark Phoenix though, which just like that's one of the ones that you understand though, because those movies have been so bad for so long that people were just exhausted.
It's kind of amazing that they kept making them.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. The thing here, I look at these and the thing here I see is like, well, all these movies are bad. That's why they're not doing very well, with a couple exceptions. But like, people are like, why is Shaft doing bad? Why is Dark Phoenix doing bad? Why is Godzilla doing bad? It's because they're not good movies. But then I see things like I really expected Pokemon to be one of the biggest movies of the year because it's one of the biggest franchises in the world, but it just didn't do that well.
Yeah, I'm wondering, is this because literally Endgame has sucked up all the money, or is it because people are just not seeing movies very much this year for economic reasons? Yeah,
it was a little of both. I want to say, like, I think like people go to the movies once a quarter, And Endgame was such an event that they're like, oh, we did the movies this year. We did this, that big one.
Yeah, it was 3 hours. I'm sick of being in the theater.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. Aladdin is doing well, so that's good.
Yeah, that's interesting because I'm still interrogating my own thought process for why I took my kids to see Aladdin in the theater, but I have not taken them to see Detective Pikachu, and probably will not. It's a lot of effort for me to go see any movie, and I'm like, I literally, you ask me why did you see Aladdin, not Detective Pikachu? I'm like, I don't know. I feel
it's
like
Aladdin.
Yeah, like maybe it's like a safer choice. Like you kind of know what you're getting into. Detective Pikachu, it's kind of weird. It's Ryan Reynolds. I don't know.
Really weird. Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely gonna watch it when it comes out on streaming, whatever. Who knows what?
Yeah.
But
not Netflix.
Not Netflix. Yeah, I am. I don't know. The people seeing movies once a quarter thing always is interesting to me because like. Obviously there's like a distribution going on because when I was younger I definitely saw I feel like half of the movies that came out in the theater and now I see, I very rarely get out to see them, and I don't know, there's an interesting population sort of statistics to be read into there.
Yeah, so I mean we'll see how the rest of the summer shakes out. It's really up in the air right now. I mean I think overall box office returns are down. Like even if you have the biggest movie in the year, like overall the box office is down year over year. And last year was a very good year for the box office. It was up from 2017, which doesn't happen anymore, right? It's like been a slow downturn for years and years. And 2018 was an up, so everyone's like, "Hey, nope, it was not part of a new trend. It's just an aberration. We're going down again, and we're going to sink even further than we thought." So, hooray.
Interesting.
Go see movies in theaters, guys. It's the best way to see them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw, this was like a random half in the bag episode, but Mike, the host of that show, goes on this rant where he's like, stop going to see movies in theaters, let movie theaters die, and let the Amazons and Netflixes just take over making movies. And
that makes me angry.
I don't remember what exactly his reasoning was there.
I mean, he goes to shitty theaters, like there's people talking and like they're not clean, and like there's a lot of shitty movie theaters out there.
We haven't given our plug for Alamo Drafthouse in a while, but I want to give my semi-annual plug to go to Alamo Drafthouse if you possibly can, because it's so much nicer. Much nicer. And I mean,
Alamo Drafthouse, absolutely, where you can. There are like good, like well-kept theaters out there. They're just harder to find. They're not going to be your big chains. They're not going to be your AMCs, your Cinemarks, your Regals. They're going to be smaller theaters, independently owned theaters. And a lot of those do show some of the big movies. Like Angelica is a chain, but it's a chain of independently owned smaller theaters, and they showed Endgame. So there's ways to do it. Yeah. Doof. All right. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was a movie we hinted at in that last section, Matt. I saw Toy Story 4 over the weekend, and I have feelings.
Tell me about them.
I want to talk about it. So I think the one thing, like I think in like by law, you have to start every review of Toy Story 4 talking about how the series ended perfectly in 3 and this is an unnecessary movie. Like you have, like every review I've read of this movie starts with that thing. Like the big question about Toy Story 4 is, will it make itself relevant? Like it's everything seemed to wrap up in a nice bow after Toy Story 3, and did this movie need to exist, or is it clearly just a Disney prerogative to make money? And the interesting thing about this movie is it had a very troubled production. I don't know if you knew this. I think we talked about this when Incredibles 2 came out last year, because Incredibles 2 was coming out in Toy Story's slot, but Toy Story got delayed a year.
Right.
So they pushed up Incredibles to fill that slot. and they had to do some Herculean animating to finish Incredibles 2 in time. But this movie had a very troubled production, and there were story issues. Multiple people came in to do rewrites, but they said they had a kernel of an idea, and they thought the idea was too good to not do anything with. And I'm happy to report that is absolutely 100% true. I'm not interested in ranking these movies because I really enjoy all the Toy Story movies, and I don't want to like arbitrarily rank them. But this is a very good movie. This is a very different kind of movie. It is worthy of being made. I still agree that Toy Story 3 was a good cap, but this is a movie about Woody kind of dealing with what happens now, what comes next. Like 3 was very much a movie about his boy is growing up, but he found a new home, right? Toy Story 3 ends where they found Bonnie, and now they're like, it's the circle of life that your kid grows up and then you go to the new kid. And this movie's kind of like, well, sometimes that doesn't really always work out. Like this isn't a spoiler to say that one of the instigating moments of the story is that Bonnie likes Jesse the cowboy better than Woody the cowboy. Bonnie likes playing with the girl cowboy more and takes off Woody's sheriff badge and gives it to Jesse. And for a second when that movie did that, I was like, oh God, are we going to do the Woody's jealous storyline again? We did that already. That was Toy Story 1. We got there. And that's not what this movie does, thankfully. He's very happy. He's thrilled for Jesse and thrilled that she's happy and being loved by this kid. But there's something missing. It's not the same for him, and he's kind of soul searching on what does that mean. This is like, I think this is crazy, Matt, because this is a movie about parenthood, and like I don't think any children is going to get anything that's going on in this movie. Like I think Pixar movies always work on that double level, right? And I think there's a lot of very funny stuff in here. Key and Peele play a duck and a rabbit that are sewn together, and it's hilarious. It's really great. But the themes of this movie are like really adult. Like it's dealing with, what do you do now? What is life after your kid doesn't need you anymore? Or has found someone else they need that isn't you. She makes this doll Forky, which is the thing that everyone's talking about, which is adorable and funny, and it's really great. And it's kind of diving into the existential, like what is a toy, like what is existence, like it's kind of diving into these questions, and it's fascinating. It's funny. It's heartwarming in all the right ways. You cry at the end, of course. There are these ventriloquist dummy toys in this movie that are like the scariest damn things I've ever seen. Like they're horrifying. Keanu Reeves is in this movie and he's hilarious. Bo Peep returns in the movie and she's really funny. It's really good, and it's a Woody movie. He is the main focus of this movie. All the other, like all our traditional side characters really get like sidelined in this movie. If I had one complaint about it, it's that it sidelines a lot of our main characters, especially Buzz. Buzz is really sidelined in this movie. But I was thinking about like how often Buzz is just like a gimmick after the first movie. Like how has Buzz changed in Toy Story 2 and 3? He really hasn't. Like he had his arc in the first movie, and then he's just kind of been the guy to do jokes.
Yeah. I'd say the first movie is his movie, but Woody is the main character of the Toy Story franchise.
Yeah. And maybe the Disney is just trying to distance themselves from Tim Allen as much as possible. So like he did just like a bare minimum of lines and then just moved on. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
No, this is a delightful movie. It's really good. I left the theater very satisfied with everything that the movie was doing. And again, we're at a place where like this is a good stop. Like,
yeah,
if they announce Toy Story 5, I'm not gonna throw up my hands and be like, oh, but you ended it perfectly, because they've proven that if they have a good story, they're gonna make the movie, and we can have faith in them. But this is a good spot. This is a good spot.
I mean, Pixar has earned a huge amount of goodwill through just like really good, solid storytelling, and I'm not at all surprised to hear it's great. And I did just take my kids to see Aladdin, but I would really love to take them to see this too. So
I think they would enjoy this. I think there's a lot of very funny moments that kids would enjoy, and then you will get all the thematic resonance out of it. I think as a father and a parent, you're gonna like you're gonna be like, oh, I'm the Woody character. Like that's me right there.
Yeah. Dad, why are you crying in the theater?
Yeah,
Type.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, the animation is up to Pixar standard. Like I was looking at Toy Story 1 the other day, and that's a great movie. But oh my god, like the stuff that we've done now it's just incredible.
Yeah.
This movie looks so good.
I mean, Toy Story 1 was basically the first time you could possibly make a movie that was remotely passable using CGI exclusively. And
I mean, Andy in Toy Story 1 is
terrifying.
He is the kid of a single family because Pixar could not afford to animate another human being. So they're just like, Andy doesn't have a dad. We can't afford it. And now, like, there's hundreds of humans in this movie. And like, if you compare the dog, the dog from Toy Story 1,
right,
to there's a cat in Toy Story 4, and like you compare them, and it's like one looks like a hell beast, and the cat is photorealistic. Like it's beautiful. It looks like a cat. Like it's just, I don't know. Like the stuff they keep doing, absolutely incredible. Like I love Pixar movies, even the ones that aren't as popular and aren't as successful. I usually enjoy because they at least like tell stories in a way that I appreciate, even if everything doesn't quite come together. There's some of this movie that doesn't quite come together for me. I think like Forky seems to be like the instigating factor in the whole movie, but after about the midway point, he kind of just like gets sidelined to focus on Woody, which is fine because this is Woody's movie. It's absolutely Woody's movie, but it just feels a little structurally weird to me that they built up Forky to be like this most important plot element and then kind of go like, well, not really. But other than that, like, it's great. It's great.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll try to see it as soon as possible.
Yeah, do so. Everyone should. Go see Toy Story 4. You get to see Keanu Reeves, who's having the summer of a lifetime. The Keanu-sans is here, and it's so good.
Cool. I'm pretty happy with the new elevation of Keanu Reeves into a religious figure. I'm glad this is happening. This is one of the better developments in 2019.
Yeah, I agree. So that is Toy Story 4 playing now. It's underperforming, so maybe go see it. Matt.
Okay.
All right, guys. I think that's going to be it for the week. A little bit of a different episode, but I thought it was a good talk. I hope you guys think so as well. And if you have any opinions on any of this stuff, streaming the box office Toy Story 4, reach out to us. You can contact us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on our Twitter account @doofmedia.
Yeah, and if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found. And you can find all the shows we produce over on our website, doofmedia.com. That's where you can find shows like Deep Impact, which is shows by our friends at Media MD that they're doing a chapter by chapter, literally chapter by chapter deep dive into Wild Bill's web serial Pact and a bunch of other shows. So head on over to Doof Media and check that out. And if you like what we do here, consider supporting us. You can become a patron of Doof Media. You can head on over to patreon.com, donate $1 a month, and get a bunch of cool stuff. Yeah. Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts if you can't afford to support us on Patreon. Every review on those platforms helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here. All right, guys, we will see you next week with Matt. What? Next week we finish Avatar. Oh, yeah. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.